Hi folks, Marty here, and glad you could join me for this week's painting tutorial. And what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at a painting of a lighthouse, and it's Pigeon Point Lighthouse, and it's in the US. So what we're going to do is quickly get our wee sketch in, and I'm going to grab my ruler, and I'm going to kind of roughly divide the page into thirds, and my horizon is going to be around about here, so a third up from the bottom. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is quickly establish the height and the width of our lighthouse, and it has a little house in front of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to jot that in quickly. And I'm not being too precious about this. I just want it to look old, rustic and wonky. And then it has one this side as well. So this, by putting this in first, this is going to help me to kind of establish a better scale of our lighthouse. And this is just under the roof here, and then down the side, and then a couple of windows here, and then the front door. And I know this doesn't have a window in the original, but I think we'll put a couple in anyway. Why not? And this lighthouse is quite well known. You should be able to get a picture of it anywhere, really. Any of those picture sites that you can do it or download it for loyalty as a loyalty free image. Do have a wee look. Okay, so that's our main little house in front here, and then I'm gonna. There's a little bit on the side here. I don't know exactly what that is, but we'll pop it in anyway. And then we're going to have grassy fields and so on here. So we'll just pop them on there. Okay, so we'll want to try and work out the width of this. Maybe we'll start about here and drop it over here like this. And I think we'll take it up to about maybe 3 times the size of the house here. You're kind of looking at your pencil. If that's 1, you'll want this to be 2 and maybe 3. I think maybe up about here. Alright, so what you can do is you can use your ruler just at this stage, just to help you. Just keep that nice and light, because you don't want this a big hard ruler line going through it. And then we'll do the other side over here. If you want to be really precise about this kind of thing, you could always consider just doing the old tracing trick, which you'll see in my other video showing you how to do that. But I do like it. I do like them when they're kind of very rough and hand-drawn looking. So that's just the base of that kind of first ring that'll go around that. And just nice and gentle flicks. Okay, and then I'm gonna follow on through with that line there. And then you've got this balcony area here. And that's going to go on out past. So keep it all nice and loose. You don't be digging in hard when you're drawing. That means if you need to make any corrections, it's a lot easier to rub out. Okay, and then there's these little supports that seem to go underneath it. And then there's a few here like that. And a couple down this way. Okay, so that's our balcony area. And then it's got like a bit of a railing around it here. So, what I might do is come back later on after the painting and maybe hit that in with the pen. Okay, so I'm gonna follow this line here on up. If you even need to use your ruler to do that, go ahead. Keep it all nice and loose. Don't be digging in. Okay, and then we'll just round that off like that. And bring that on down there just so it's more visible. Okay. There you go, it lines as straight as a banana. So we'll just give that a wee rub out there and try that again. If at first, eh? There's a bit better looking now. And then we're up to this glass section here. And I wish I had have maybe started this picture down a bit lower, because I would have loved to have got that little roof bit in. Just very interesting. There you go, close enough. And then you've got the lamp inside, if that's what you call it. Kind of reminds me of when we first moved to the States back in the 90s. I remember I was asking someone, did they have a torch? Because we're out living in the country and I needed to go out and do something. And I asked someone, did they have a torch? And they were wondering why on earth I would need a torch. And did I not think it was a bit dangerous just to see my way? Would a flashlight that do? And so when we realised that they called them flashlights and we called them torches back in Ireland, it was quite amusing. I'm just going to indicate where this kind of wire goes around that little fence and also up here. But we're going to do that kind of thing later on when we come back to it. Okay, so then it has a quite a large window here. And it's kind of off-centered a wee bit, so we'll see what we can do there. As a wee bit like that. Okay, there we go. I'm going to make that line a wee bit stronger so as you all can see it there. And I think that's us, as far as the sketch is concerned anyway. And the only thing left to do now is I don't normally use a lot of masking fluid in my work, but if I'm doing little foregrounds like this, it's quite handy. So what I'm going to do is get some masking fluid. There's different types you can get, obviously, you know. Okay, there's different types of this masking fluid. This is a blue coloured one, and this is a little applicator. That's very handy for putting it on. Keeps your brushes from getting messed up. Just make sure you give it a good old stir there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some flowers in the foreground, and I want to preserve the whites of the paper. So as later on I can come back and remove that and paint them in. So we'll put wee bits in here and there, and hopefully you'll be able to see that okay. That's the other handy thing about the blue here. When you're videoing your work, or when people are following you online, at least they can see what you're doing. When you have the other more traditional sort of creamy colour, it's a bit harder to see on the canvas. So you want this to be random-ish, as random as you can make it look, that is, anyway. Okay. What I might just do is a wee bit of splatter here and there, a wee bit of random. And then just kind of manipulate it out until it looks like the shape of a flower or something like that. Obviously, if you were using a brush with us to do this technique, it would spatter a lot easier. Okay, so don't want to go overboard with that. So remember just to clean off your tools there, so as you don't get that old masking fluid build up on it. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, well, there's a couple of things you can do. Oh, I think I got a bit of splatter up where I didn't want it there, but let's get that off. What you can do is you can just let that dry, go away and have a wee cuppa, and come back again. Or else, if you want to work fast, you can use the hairdryer to do that. So there we go. That's our basic foundation ready to receive the paint. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to mix up a bit of a blue for the top area, and I'm going to drop some clouds, some nice warm moody clouds in around here, and then maybe something distant here. It's either going to be something that indicates water or maybe mist, if you don't want to be too exact. And then in the foreground, we're just going to do a lot of dragging the paint around, and you'll see that when we get to it. But one of the things you're going to learn from this lesson today is how to bend light around a round object to make it look like the object is going cylindrical. I maybe I was able to say that, but there you go, first time, not bad. So you can make it look like the light is bending around it, and I'll show you a wee trick to do that. But first up, we're going to get our brushes together, and we're going to just mix up some paint. So I'm just going into a cobalt blue there. And you don't want this to be too strong. So what I'm doing is I'm mixing up some of my paint first, and then I'm going to mix up a light red colour. And this is going to be for our warm clouds. And it's all going to happen quite fast. And I'm using yellow ochre as well. Okay. So I'm going to do this rather than wetting the whole page. I'm just going to do this wet on dry. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to paint our blue right through here, because obviously this is made of glass, and that's the other side, the inside of this roof part. So I probably don't want to hit that. It wouldn't really matter if you do or not anyway. Okay, so grab your paint and just cut in around the roof of that. And then you want to take it on through there. Bring it down the edges. Okay, as long as I keep the bead here alive, I can paint away there without any fear of it drying out on me too fast or give me issues. I'm just cutting in this side of it as well. In fact, you know what? See if you want to just go ahead and hit that roof in as well there. And then what we'll do is we're going to be painting that area dark anyway. So I don't think it's going to really matter much. In fact, it'll be a good undercoat for it. A lot of painting is just making it up as you go and planning on the spot on the fly. And I'm going to just soften this bit up here, because this is where we're going to have some warm clouds coming in, almost like thundery looking. So that's where we go into our, we're going to our yellow ochre. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to soften this up with a tissue a little, just in case I don't want that to go green on me by mixing the two. So this is like the top of the clouds where the light is hitting. Okay. Super. And then I'm just taking away some of that. In fact, you know what I'm going to do here? I might actually add a wee bit of that in there, rather than this lighthouse looking pure white, which I'm sure in real life it doesn't. A lot of these things are very weather worn. So what we might just do is that, and then just dry up that edge there a wee bit. So I'll take that stark whiteness off it there, okay? Alright, so now I'm going to dip into my light red, as I said earlier on, that I've made up. I'm going to just jump that in like that. I'm just going to paint down the side of that lighthouse. I might have a bit of an issue on the other side now. That's the only thing, because it's going wet into wet because of the undercoat of the yellow ochre. Okay, so just bring it down to as far as maybe there, and then just drop this in as well now. This will probably bleed into that, which we'll just have to work with that when we get there. if I need to, if I need to dry that out or whatever, or, remove that, we can do that. It's like what I always say, watercolors, it's more about learning to work with the mistakes that you'll make. It's not that you necessarily get better, so you learn to hide the mistakes better, I think. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up a bit of a purpley colour, so cobalt blue, and you can throw some of that light red there that you had there into it, and I'm going to just drop us down the back here. It could be anything, it could be mist, it could be... I'll just bring it across here. We're going to have grass and stuff and reeds and all that kind of stuff coming up here. So what we'll do, to be on the safe side, I think we'll just soften that up. So I'm just going to make a damp brush here. When I say damp, it's because I'd taken most of the water off it, and then we could just soften that edge with a wee tissue there. And hopefully that will just continue to go on down and mix for us there. Okay, so we're getting some of this light red. Okay, so let's keep that softer, okay? We're just barely damp. We don't want that to be wet or it'll start bleeding up into the... So what we could do is we could either mop this colour out of this here, or we could leave it and let it look like there's maybe some reflection there. But it's the kind of thing we can come back a bit later and do anyway. So what I'm going to do with a wee damp brush now, I'm going to just go along the top of those clouds there and pull out little bits of paint, and it'll look like top of clouds there. Okay, and what I'll do is we'll get a tissue and just go in there and just lift that up. It's not that it was a mistake or anything, it's just that just the nature of watercolor, learning how to work with it, and you'll always run into all these little scenarios, and it's all about learning how to work with them, Okay, I think we'll kind of work with that. So there we go. We have that basically cut in, and what we want to do now is we want to turn our attention to the lighthouse building itself here, and obviously don't forget to put our Mr. Smiley in here. That's our direction of sun. So if we have the light coming from this direction here, it's going to cause light on the front here and shadow forming here. Obviously the building's round, so you're not going to have hard edges as such unless you have the shadow from the stand up here or the walkway coming down. And I don't really necessarily want to draw this in, but just to try and explain what's going on here. So I'm gonna just put it in like this here. Obviously I wouldn't do this. It's only I want you to see what I'm doing. So that's probably your hardest edge here, and it's because it's direct shadow, but it diffuses as it goes down the length of the building here. So we need to mix up a shadow color that's going to do that. And if you remember, our shadow color is our cobalt, alizarin crimson, and a little bit of yellow ochre, just to tone it down. Keep this nice and light, this mixture. You don't want it to get muddy on you. And you want it to be cool as well, that's the other thing. You want this to be a cool shadow. And by putting this in as a cool shadow, it'll on the blue side, it'll make this warm cloud here even more vibrant looking. Okay, so we've got that mixed up. So here's the trick. You want nice clean water for this, and what you're going to do is the light is going to hit right here, this side here, and it's going to bend around about here. So what you want to do is you want to get a damp brush. That's just too much water on it, I think. Okay, and you basically just want to slightly dampen that. Okay, but make sure it's only damp and not soaking wet. Right. And then what we'll do is we'll bring our shadow color in, and we'll just let it come right down through that window there. Don't worry about that, because we'll be getting that with darker stuff anyway. And then I'm going to go up here onto this bit as well. Now there's part of the white brick up here, but it's going to be in shadow anyway. And then we'll just drop that down there. And what we can do here is maybe add another wee touch of blue into that cooler side there. I'm just bringing that right down the edge there, as best as I can get it, or as close as I can get that is, you know. And there's wee tricks you can do later on, you know, that's not very straight or accurate, so don't worry about that, you know. You're not going for this exact architectural style drawing here. After all, it is a watercolor, and some of the best watercolors I find anyway are on the looser side. Okay, so what I think we need to do here is need to get a damp brush and just, when I say damp, just take a lot of that water out. Just go down and soften that up there. Okay, and what I'm going to do is see that line that I drew in just to show you what we were doing. I'm going to rub that out because I wouldn't have put that in anyway. It's just to try and indicate what we were doing, and that is a bit of a hard edge, that, because it's direct kind of or shadow falling from that hard edge and then coming down, getting a bit softer. Okay, so that gives us that idea that the building is bending. Okay, so what we could do now is, obviously the lights come from here, so this house, this part of the house at the front is going to be in shade, along with these little bits here. So what we'll do is we'll just use that same shadow color, and that's our cobalt blue alizarin, and just a wee touch of yellow ochre, and that will just give us a nice translucent grey colour here, and we'll just pop that in across the front. I mean, this roof is going to be grey as well, so what I might actually do is I might bring the whole thing down Let it be an undercoat. Just down the front that a little bit. There's just a bit of fun, isn't it? This is just trying to learn to relax with your painting and not take it too serious. Get a bit of music on in the background and something that calms you down, gives you good headspace, if you like. Or as we like to say in Northern Ireland, give my head peace. Okay, and there's a bit of a shadow down here. Okay, and I can come back later on and sort that out. What I might just do is pop a wee bit of light on the side of that by just lifting that off there. Okay. Okay, that's come together now. So I think the next stage, there's not a lot to this really. It looks more complicated than what it actually is. But it's really just a few colours. So what we're going to do now, we're going to make up a nice dark colour for all this kind of ornamentation here, if you like. And once we do that, we'll just use the same colour for all this, all the darks here, and make up enough to do the job. And so what we're going to do is we want a nice strong colour. So if you look at your palette and look at your darkest blue, it's probably going to be an ultramarine. Pop a bit of that in, a bit of burnt umber, probably if you have burnt umber. If you don't, maybe a little bit of alizarin crimson. So it's your strong colour. So this is meant to be black, but obviously you don't want to use black if you can avoid it. I just find that black is just way too harsh. It just never looks great. Whereas if you mix up your own darks, it just looks so much better. Okay, so here we go. I switched to a smaller brush there, so I did. And then I'm just having a wee look at that, making sure it's solid enough for me. And it goes round behind that lamp or whatever you call it. I'm sure there's some very specific name for it. So again, you don't want to be getting in and out and working this too much, you know. Try and do it all in one go. And anything you don't like, you can always, but anything in terms of the pencil work. Let's go out round the side here. I can come back later on and work with that a bit. Okay, so next bit is this bit goes across here. You just get your brush loaded up there. And when it dries out, it should dry out a lot lighter looking. Something like that. Bring that out a wee bit more of that balcony area. And then there's these supports that go underneath it, like this. So I'm just blocking the whole thing in. And I'm trying to do it all in one go, if you know what I mean. Because I don't want to be getting in and out working this. I have this wee bird that comes to the studio window every day, and he jumps up and down on my door handle if he's trying to get my attention. I actually don't know why to do that. Then you've got this band that goes across here. So there we go. That's not too bad. It's a wee bit down there. It looks a bit wonky. Always a danger going back into your work again like that, you know. But sure. And always come back later on and tweak that, do stuff with it. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to try and fix that little bit there. So sometimes you get just stuff that runs and it might be just too strong, but we'll work at it a bit there. And this brush here that I'm using actually is called, it's called an eradicator brush. It's great for lifting bits of paint out again and stuff, you know. It's basically like a very short-haired synthetic brush. So you just can gently just massage it with clean water, and then you go on with a tissue and then just try to lift it off as best you can. Maybe try a wee bit more there. So basically I'm just trying to draw your eye away from this, not draw your attention to it. Just pretend it never happened. There we go, getting there. It's funny, you know, we're just saying watercolor's more about learning to fix your mistakes. Just pop that on there. Try and fix that bit in again. And then just make sure it's not pulling on me this time, eh? Alright, so that's the roof bit done. We can come back and later on and we can that'll be highlights that if I so desire. And but what we're going to do now is we're going to work our way on down this building. And we'll put in the windows here. And folks, that tapping you hear is me actually shaking the excess water off the brush. When I dip the brush into the basin, I have a plastic basin here, a big old plastic basin. And when I clean my brush out, you'll hear me tapping the brush on the side just to shake off any excess water. So that's what's happening. And a couple of wee bits of detail around here. And then we had a stronger bit here at the front of that. Okay, so this roof here could do with being a bit darker. What it did, I actually took that color and I just added a bit of water to it. Just to tone it down a bit. Don't want it to be jet black, you know. There you go. And underneath that little roof, we'll hit that on with a bit of a stronger color. And then we'll pop these two windows on down the side here. And then we'll put a few in here. Then we'll drop that door in. And then these are little supports for down the side here. Little areas of interest. Okay, that's coming together. So that's basically our lighthouse there. We're going to come along later on with some detail work. But what we're going to do now is we're going to turn our attention to the foreground area. And this is where it gets a bit interesting. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to layer in some washes here. And we've got this sort of like nice looking warm hay kind of color. We're going to kind of drop them up around here, and then we're going to bleed in some strongish green in the middle, and maybe bring that on down into a darker bluey green. Okay, so it's trying to get the thing complementing with what's going on up at the top here. Okay, and then what we're just going to do is just drop it in around here. What I'm doing is I'm just moving down page here and just dropping in some stronger, more saturated color. And then what we'll do is maybe throw a wee bit of burnt sienna in here as well. Just put it here and there, just to make it look like there's kind of shadow going on and stuff like that. And then I think what we'll do now is we'll start going green here. So you're basically using any of your blues with a yellow. And then what I'm going to do is on down the bottom, I'm going to just go a lot stronger like this here. Just a bit more blue into the mix. And then I'm going to do a wee bit of this kind of thing here. And folks, just a wee gentle reminder, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet and you're getting a lot out of these videos, if you could do that, that would be brilliant. And obviously leave a comment. I do read them all and I try to answer them all as best I can. And don't forget to hit the old like button there. All this helps to push it out to more people, as you know. Okay, so folks, what I've done here is I've just got some lighter colour, some gouache, and I've mixed it in with some yellow ochre. I'm just kind of dry brushing it along the top here. And what that does, it helps to push back any of those hard, uneven lines that have developed there, or will develop, you know, as you're just softens it up. Yeah. This is our kind of wheat or hay, or just bring that on down like that. Okay, so that just softens that up, see, for me. I'm just brushing on down there. So that's the beauty of having blue masking fluid. It just helps you to keep track of where you are. Okay, so remember, in our light, it's coming from this direction here. So obviously this lighthouse is going to cast a bit of shadow along here. So I'm going to go back into my shadow color. I'm just going to pop it in along here. I'm just keeping that really rough there, okay? There you go, where's our bit of shadow down here? So what we're going to do now is we're going to turn our attention to some of these flowers here. So before we take this masking fluid off, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up a nice strong green colour. And that'll do for just the stalks and reeds and bits and bobs that are going to be coming up here. So we want quite a dark we want quite a dark colour for this here. And then we're just kind of just flick the brush like this and that, just back and forth, and if you do it up and down like this, it makes it look like there's lighter grass coming up from the bottom as well. So you're kind of making the best out of both, if you know what I mean. what we'll maybe do is a wee bit of spotter here and there as well. Just add a wee bit of texture. And make sure you've a slightly damp tissue just to clean up any little drops there. Okay, so we don't want to overdo that, okay? We want to just kind of state it rather than, or sorry, we want to suggest it rather than state it. What I'm going to do is get that gouache colour again, and then maybe pop a few bits of the lighter stuff in here and there. Okay folks, so here's the bit where we take the masking fluid off. You can either just rub it off with your hands or else using a razor. Okay, so that definitely helps there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get some nice warm colours here and just add a wee bit of colour to these. We'll get some nice red and maybe some yellows. We'll just see how we go with that. So here we go. Some nice strong reds there. Make them look like poppies and so on. When you're putting that masking fluid down, you're trying to keep in mind what kind of flowers you want these to be. And that white that you just preserved there, that'll just help to burn through those, you know. This makes it more translucent or more luminous, should I say. You see how luminous they look? And you'd never get that by just, you know, putting the paint over the top of your existing layers there. It would just look muddy. And we'll leave the odd wee white bit here and there, just as suggestions of something else. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get a nice strong colour for the centre of these here. And I don't really like to use black, to be honest. I just find it's just too stark. So I'll mix up ultramarine, alizarin. Okay, and what we'll just do, we'll just put the odd wee drop here and there while those kind of petals are still damp and blend and bleed. Just here and there, you don't have to do every one of them, you know. Okay, that's coming on rightly. So I'm just looking at it now and just taking a wee bit of time just to make sure I'm happy with everything. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I need to do something up here at the top, just to bring a bit of clarity to what's going on there. So that lamp, or whatever it's called, needs a wee bit of colour in it, I think. So I'm just going to mix up a sort of grey kind of colour there. What we're doing at this stage of the game, we're just going around and checking it and just making sure it's all starting to look right. And then what I'm going to do is just get a wee bit of clean water here, and I'm just going to put it along here, and then just lift that off, just to make it look like there's some reflection and light hitting down the side of it. Put down the side here as well. And then a bit round the side of this one. I'm going to use this wee fountain pen here, and I'm going to start popping in a wee bit of detail. So maybe starting with the top here. So it's not exactly a pen and wash painting we set out to do here, but this kind of helps us to pop in some detail that we've lost maybe. Just wee suggestions here and there. And you've got that glass that comes down on the outside here. Wee quick strokes. And then you've got this platform area here. Let's switch to this other fountain pen. It has a finer nib on it. I think that's much better. So just wee touches here and there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some wee little suggestions of lines, wee brickwork. Don't go overboard with it, obviously, you know. Okay, and then what I think I'll do is just do a couple of wee bits and pieces in here. So just wee bits of detail and stuff here. Obviously, don't go overboard with this, you know. Okay, folks, I think that's probably us, although there's a couple of wee things. Maybe put a wee line down here. Maybe we'll put a few wee birds in here now. Maybe one over here. There you go, and then we'll just sign that. So there you go, folks. Just kept it pretty simple. It's not exactly a architectural drawing as such, but it's gives you a wee bit of an idea of what you can do there. In fact, you know what I'm going to do? Just looking at this, I'm thinking of getting my wee shadow colour there again. And maybe putting a wee bit of shadow down the inside of there. Yeah, that kind of helps there. And then maybe a wee bit along here. Maybe a wee bit if there was a windowsill here. And then let's drop a wee bit down here, why not? I think we'll just put a wee bit more shadow down those. Maybe a wee bit of shadow across that lump. And what I think we'll just do now is that we just a wee bit of detailing around that wee fence here. Keep it all nice and wonky. And maybe just helps to give a wee bit of perspective to it. Okay, folks, I think that's us. Before I start getting on doing much more to that, I think we'll just leave it at that. And then the only thing now is just to take the tape off, let you see what we have here. So that's it, folks. That's the taking the tape off is like a bit of a treat, so it is. So folks, there you go. There's our wee painting. So have a go at that. Just have a bit of fun with it. And until I see you next week again, keep them brushes wet and take care of yourselves.